Well, this is embarrassing. I really think I'm reasonably smart, I would say, but I got caught up in not one, but two scams that were set up to scam and prey on writers like me, writers like you. So I thought it was really important today on the How to Be an Author podcast to talk about literary scams, things that these not very honest companies and individuals do to prey on writers and authors. We're going to be talking about why writers and authors are so susceptible to scams and why they are, kind of falling for these scams even though they're smart. We're going to be talking about what kind of scams are out there and some things that don't look like scams but are. And then we're going to be talking about really how to tell whether something is a scam. So let's get started. I think this is a really, really good one. And even if it forces me to relive the misery that was getting scammed multiple times, all I can say is I'm happy I came out the other end. I'm happy I'm here still writing and still trying to motivate and inspire writers. So just know that even if you did get scammed, don't be embarrassed. It's not your fault. But, if you're like me and you get scammed 2 times, now it's starting to be shame on me. I'm not going to get scammed a 3rd time for sure. And so I hope that this podcast episode helps you to not get scammed ever or again. If you're a writer dreaming of becoming a successful author, join me, writing coach Karena AKhavein, on the How to Be an Author podcast, your weekly source for writing information, inspiration, and motivation. I'm so happy you're with me today on the How to Be an Author podcast as we talk about the embarrassingly terrible subject of scams. It's important to talk about this because honestly, there are lots of industries where there are scammers, but I think that writers and authors are super susceptible, and there are so many of them out there. That's the insidious thing, is that so many of these companies or entities that are scams are so present that many writers are convinced that they're legit. And that's really dangerous. So writers and authors are susceptible to scams because they maybe don't know everything about publishing. They feel kind of dumb and they feel like they need somebody to guide them through it. And these companies and individuals are really there posing as someone who's going to help them to get the information that they need and to kind of fulfill their dream of publishing a book. The dream part is another major thing, right? We have this dream in something that we don't know enough about, and it's such a huge thing to do. It's such a huge goal that's scary, that's intimidating, and that you want it to happen. And there are kind of these barriers to success. And you think, this would be so much easier with support. And these scamming entities are right there acting like the most supportive, best book friend ever. They're going to be helping you out, except they're not helping you out. They're scamming you. One of the big things for writers too is that you guys hate marketing. Maybe some of you listening to this are like, no, I love marketing. Well, you are a minority. Many writers hate marketing and they'll do anything to avoid it or do anything to feel supported in their marketing efforts. And this leaves them wide open to scammers. Another thing that scammers prey on with writers and authors is our ego. They're going to flatter our ego. They're going to play with our emotions. They're going to make us feel like we were selected. We're the chosen ones. We're so great. And they're going to help us be even greater. And we're hoping for this leg up. And we're thinking, this seems like a great deal. What could possibly go wrong? And then we get scammed. There are a lot of beginner writers out there. There's no consistent education or no consistent way of becoming a writer, which means that it's super open to people on the fringes who are trying to take advantage of the fact that maybe you don't quite know how this works and maybe you don't have the experience and maybe you're desperate to get ahead. There's no accountability at all when somebody says, I'm going to do this thing for you. And then you say, well, you didn't do it quite exactly. They're going to say, prove it. That's a problem. You look at all of these other writers who are so successful, and then a scammer is going to say, oh yeah, I worked with this person and that person. How do you actually verify that? Half the time that's not true. And so you're getting scammed that way as well. So the first scam we're going to talk about, this is just very basic, is I've had writers come to me and be like, oh, how much should I pay a literary agent? And I'm like, oh no, are there still people out there thinking that you're supposed to pay for representation? Let me tell you, in no uncertain terms, no one should pay for representation. So if somebody's trying to tell you, listen, yeah, I'm going to represent you and I don't really charge anything except I charge for photocopies and I charge, these executive fees and I charge my assistant and blah, 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 that's a scammer. You're not going to pay for that. Most agents are actually gambling on the fact that maybe they're going to be able to sell your work. They're getting paid when they do that, not at any other time. So if you're shelling out the dough for stamps or envelopes or what have you, that's a scam. The other big agent scam that I've mentioned a few times because this happened to me is agents who say, I love your work. I really want to represent you. However, I need you to edit your book before I take you on. And that's fair enough. That's fair. Many agents actually will say this. Come back to me when you've edited it. I'll take another look at it. But it's the agent who says, here are a couple editors that I highly recommend. They're scamming you. They are trying to get you to hire one of their friends and they get a percentage. Anybody who does this is a scammer. And when you think about it at first, you think, oh, that's more of a referral fee, right? Yeah, that's the gray area. That's how they don't get arrested. I would say you definitely don't want to do this because let me tell you, the agents who are telling you that you should use their editor or editors and that then they'll take a look at your book, what percentage actually takes your book on after that, many of them will end up ghosting you. Total scam. So how do scams make you think that they're not a scam? There are a lot of companies out there that are massive scams. There's one in particular, and I'm not going to name names. Honestly, I'm not here to be toxic and I'm not here to denounce anyone. I'm not here to be bad-mouthing anyone specifically. All you need to do is look online, literary scam, book scam, publishing scam. You're going to come up with some of these company names. But let me tell you first, how do they do it to make you think that they're not a scam? Well, first of all, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. They have a huge presence. They pay for a ton of advertising. So every time you're on a blogger's site that's talking about writing, or you're looking for writing services, or you just Googled how to do this, whatever with writing, and boom, ads are popping up from these so-called publishers or these so-called marketers for your book. And you're like, wow, they're really everywhere. They must be huge. They must be really successful. Well, they kind of are really successful, but it's a numbers game. They're successful because they're preying on the maximum number of writers, and they're just getting anyone to set up with them, and then they upsell them. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but they're making a ton of money off of writers. So yes, they can afford a lot of advertising because it's a numbers game, because a lot of writers will run away, but some writers won't. So a lot of these companies that are scammers, they'll make some fake social media profiles with people who are raving about their services. These are fake. Try to look up these profiles, see if they look suspicious. But the thing is, when we're writers and we're looking stuff up, we want to believe. This is the other reason we're so easily scammed. When somebody tells us, your book is awesome and I want to publish it and I can help you to make it really great, you want to believe. It's your ego. It's your dream. And so you're not going to look that carefully. In fact, you might fight friends and family who tell you, this looks really scammy. And you're like, no, it doesn't. You're going to get into these huge arguments because you want it to be true that somebody thought that your book was great. I'm here to tell you, your book is great or can be great. Don't fall for these things because that's going to end up burning you out. Another thing that these scammers do, these big companies, these so-called publishing companies or author service companies, a big thing that they do is that they pay for a presence in book events and at trade organizations. They have all of these letters after their name. They're part of all of these groups and you think, wow, looks really official. Well, no, these book events are money-making events. The trade organizations are often self-serving. They're making money by getting people to sign on. What do they get in exchange? They just get an air of legitimacy. So that's something that you really need to look for. These book events that usually authors will go and attend them really with no benefit. I'm going to be talking about this in a second, but the book events is such a scammy scam, just even attending one, but also these companies, these promoters, these marketers, these publishing houses that are there at the book events. The fact that they're there, I would worry even more than them not being there. Now, another thing that they do is that they have associations with actual legitimate publishing houses, especially some of the biggest publishing houses. I mean, that by now publishing houses are kind of boiling down to the big five, as they call them. They're just these conglomerates of publishers with different imprints. This makes everything very scrambled. You're looking at a publishing house and then you've got all these different imprints and sub-imprints. And some of the imprints are actually hybrid or self-publishers or these author service companies parading as publishers. And authors get lulled into this idea that, oh, I'm publishing with HarperCollins. No, you're not. You're publishing with a company that's associated themselves with that. And sometimes it's not even true, but sometimes it is true because these companies have approached the big publishers and basically told them, hey, I've got this great way to help more authors and to monetize your slush pile. Send these writers our way. Give us their contact info. They're basically selling your info. And I know that that's terrible, but publishing houses are worried about their bottom line too. They have some expenses. And many of them go to great lengths to hide the fact that they're associating with these kind of scammy publishing author services sites, but they are associating with them. So it's a really important thing to kind of go down the rabbit hole and see what this company actually is that's claiming to be author services or publisher. Many of them are a vanity press at best, but a scam at worst. These companies make a huge business with bots that are just prowling the web, approaching people, populating the social media accounts, all of that stuff to supplement all of that advertising, the tons of websites that all point to them. They keep launching new brands. It's absolutely incredible. Again, I said it's a volume game. It's all about percentages. They have so many authors that they scam with small percentages or small amounts. Really, at the end of the day, many of these authors don't bother asking for a refund, or when they do, they run them around the block for so long that they give up. Another thing that happens is they ask kind of other writing services to write about them. It's just a full chain of scamishness. Another thing that they'll do, these companies, is that they'll choose a package for you. They'll sell you into something that's low price, where they'll say, hey, for only X amount, you get this, this, and this. And then they'll start to upsell you. Most authors who sign up for one of these scammy sites end up paying a lot more than they thought they would. Also, many of these author services, especially the ones where like, yay, look, you get editing for a much lower rate. How are they doing that? I work as an editor, and there's no way I can edit a book for under a few $1,000s. I just can't do it. It's not worth my time. It's not something that I can spend adequate time and concentration on if I do it for less. So how are these companies doing it for less? They're doing it for less because they're outsourcing in places where they're paying low costs for people who are not really trained. So there's one of these companies, I'm not going to name the name of this scammy company, but it's out there. It exists and it's huge. They claim that they're somewhere in the Midwest. And again, I won't name the town, but they always proudly say that they're calling from there, they're based there. That Midwestern thing is supposed to tell you that they're trustworthy, which cracks me up. Most of their people who work for them are in the Philippines. And when they were hiring these people in the Philippines, they told them that they needed to have a decent grasp of English. These are not editors who are editing your work. These are probably machines that are just doing a basic spell check, grammar check, and then you've got someone who's not trained who's going to be telling you some basic stuff. And you're paying money for this. Do yourself a favor and just pay a real freelance professional editor and don't have the heartbreak of having the payment for not much payback. Speaking of payback, another thing that these so-called publishers do, or these, publishing companies, small presses, they withhold their royalties from you. They say there's small print where they say, oh, well, we said we were going to give you so-and-so percentage, but we meant so-and-so percentage after we make a profit. This is why now the advances are so low for conventional publishing, and also why you rarely get anything beyond your advance, is because it costs a lot of money to publish and promote a book. So if these small presses are in fact telling the truth and paying you after the profit's been made, that means almost no royalties at all. So you've just paid to publish something that you're going to make no money on. And that's a pretty horrifying prospect. Another thing that these scammy companies do is that they upsell what is essentially overpriced junk to authors. It's stuff that sounds like it could be really great. It's stuff that sounds like a fantastic opportunity. And it appeals to your ego because it makes you feel like you're getting a leg up, like you're finally playing with the big boys, you're with the professionals, you're getting promoted in these really cool places. But in fact, it's all BS. It's pretty terrible. And this is where, when you initially paid the lowest amount, let's say you did the low publishing package. Okay, I'm going to pay $1,000 all in. I'm going to get editing, formatting, and a cover. Yay. But then all of a sudden you start getting the phone calls. You start getting the sales consultants saying, you should probably actually do these add-ons, and the price is special right now, and you're not going to be able to get this afterwards. And you should, if you want your book to do well, you need to pay for these. And some of these examples of things are, for example, a web optimized press release. They'll charge like $1,200 for this thing. I've seen this before. A web optimized press release. You do know that you can do this yourself, right? There are all these services where you can submit your press releases, and you know where they go? Nowhere. Who reads a press release? Nobody's going to say, oh my God, I just read this really compelling press release and I want to reach this author and help them to sell 1 million books. It never happens. Think about that. A press release? That's useless. Absolutely useless. You would do much better pitching a story about writing your book, or pitching something, a blurb about your book, to a more established magazine or other outlet than having a web optimized press release. It's ridiculous. Another thing that so many authors fall for, and it's such a scam. And I even have a friend who's really knowledgeable. She's so smart, and she fell for this recently, and it made me crazy. They pay thousands of dollars for podcast interviews. So these so-called services that set you up to be a guest on podcasts. Okay, so here I am talking to you on a podcast right now. And you want to know why I don't really have very many guests on this podcast? Is because it's a pain in the ass to go find a guest, to set up a guest interview, and to have a guest on. I know that I can provide you with a lot of value and inspiration without having to actually pay the cost of finding a guest. So what happens is that podcasts are thrilled to be matched with guests. They're thrilled if somebody comes up and says, I would like to be a guest on your podcast. In fact, those are almost the only times that I have a guest on my podcast, is when someone really cool says, hey, I'd love to be on the podcast. And I say, great, let's set it up. And then I interview that person. But if you're an author who just released a random book and somebody's telling you that they're going to get you some podcast interviews for a high sum, I've seen this at $10,000 or worse, that's not going to be return on investment for you. So my friend who shelled out $6,000 to be featured on podcasts, so far she's been on like 3, and she hasn't seen any result from being on those 3 podcasts because they're absolutely not targeted. So if your dream is to be on a podcast, ask me or ask anybody else who's got a podcast that seems like it would be a good fit for you, and just pitch them directly. It's going to be that much easier. Another thing is ads in Reader's Digest or in other things that are absolutely not filled with readers looking for your book. People make you pay for these ads. Honestly, there are certain ads that work really well, but those are in national magazines. They have to be super targeted, and they're going to cost an absolute fortune. I don't know if you're going to recoup that money with your self-published book or as a debut author. I would say that save the big ads for when you're published by one of the big publishing companies, but otherwise focus on smaller targeted ads on social media. That's going to get you much more return on investment than paying some company a huge amount for these ads that aren't going to go anywhere. And also, PS, often you don't have the creative input on the ad. Like they're going to run an ad that they want, and you're going to think, oh, this looks really bad. And then it's too late. Another ego thing that is a total scam is making you pay for book signings. Oh my God. I mean, honestly, book signings, you can set up a book signing for yourself. Absolutely. And many bookstores like having authors for book signings. If they're carrying their book, that's great. Your publisher can help set up, if they're distributing your book to certain bookstores, you can talk about organizing book signings. However, you as a newbie self-published author paying a service for a book signing appearance, and often it's like $3,000, $4,000 at some random book event, you're getting zero result from that. You have to bring your own books as well, by the way. You have to pay to have them printed ahead of time, and you need to bring them with you. You have to pay for your transportation, your hotel, everything else. And then you've got like an hour or 45 minutes of signing books. Do you know how many books you can sign in that time? Not that many. So that's pretty pathetic because you're not getting any return on investment. So run away from that scam. I've seen other things that are charging for YouTube ads, and it's like thousands of dollars. You can charge for a YouTube ad, or you can pay for a YouTube ad yourself as well. And you can do the same things that these companies do. Why are they doing it for you? You don't need to have them do it just because you're scared of doing it. Do it yourself. You're going to save so much money, and you're going to be able to have much more control over it as well. Other scams I've seen are pitching in Hollywood. Again, half the time, these companies are going to have these third-rate producers or directors that they've hired. I mean, sometimes I almost think they're paid actors, seriously. And you're going to be pitching them. Do you know how often movie deals get actually done with that sort of a system? Almost never. That's just not going to work out for you. So focus on the actual real work of writing and promoting your book instead of trying to have this easy dream fix of I'm going to pitch it in Hollywood and I'm going to make all this money. And then the other final thing is like these infomercials and small local TV stations. Those people are probably not your reader. The infomercial, like how many times have you actually stared at an infomercial when you didn't have to? It's crazy. You have to get over your fear of marketing yourself. I have seen authors who will pay anything to feel supportive, but really, you're wasting your money. Don't do it. And then the final thing is these contests that charge you, and they get you by pushing emotional buttons. I started noticing at one point in writing group and then amongst my clients that these writers were starting to join all these contests, and they were like paying to enter contests. And all of a sudden they're doing extraordinarily well. They're placing, first place, second place, they're getting these prizes and they're entering more. And at first I was like, wow, I'm such a great writing coach. My clients are so awesome. Wow, look at this. But then when my writers started placing less and less once they were on the hook, I started getting this bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I was like, wait a second, they're getting scammed. These are money-making operations. These contests exist because they're money-making things, and they often really inflate their influence. They've got great SEO, but you're getting scammed because you've found them. It's a numbers game. You're entering the contest and is putting money in their pockets. I was approached the other day by a company that actually runs some of these contests. And they said, we really want to do a writing course for our different clients that we have for our writers. We want to help them to promote themselves online better. And so they approached me. They're like, what could you do for them? And I said, listen, I'll do a proposal and I'll tell you what I can do as a writing course that you can sell to your clients. And I said, well, can you let me know, what size mailing list do you have? Just because it's going to help me with my pricing and with my reach, all of that. And they tell me we have 150,000 people on our mailing list. And I was really impressed. I was like, wow, that's amazing. I can only wish I would have that many. And I was like, okay, so I ended up pitching them with a very reasonable cost for this online course for their clients, their authors that they have. And I had calculated it where basically they have such a huge mailing list that with the conversion, they should have sold probably at least 1,500 with a very low conversion of this course. And I had said basically, okay, well, you'll recoup your money after having sold basically 20 of these courses. So out of 1,500 that they're possibly selling off of a 150,000 mailing list, and these people told me, oh, that's way more than we thought it would be. I don't think that we can go for that. To which I say, scammers. And then they asked me to show them my whole course so that they could see. And I was like, yeah, no, those alarm bells are ringing. To which I told them, you know what? I'll make you an affiliate on my course if you like, and then you can just send your clients to me and you'll get a percentage. It's not scammy. What I did is completely legal, but so many of these entities do this with a million different services, a million different writing or publishing scams that they end up just all building a pyramid scheme amongst themselves. So that's not awesome. The simple truth is that you really need to do your research so much. You need to be so knowledgeable that ignorance is what's going to make you get caught in these scams. And in general, you're going to be paying services to self-publish as needed. You're not paying to publish conventionally, knowing that you're probably going to make less in royalties because that's being rolled in. But you really need to think about, okay, is this a scam or is this real? In most instances, this is a scam. You know, there are certain actual people like editors, writing coaches, cover designers. Those are required or encouraged services. They're not scammers unless they are. But let's teach you how to look at what a scammer is. How do you find the scammers? How do you tell if someone's a professional, especially a new professional? Like you've got some people who are newly in the industry, so they don't have the biggest online presence. But you've got to have some ways of being able to tell whether they're scamming you. So the first way to do it is I would say talk to them. Get on a Zoom call with them or get on a phone call with them. Ask them lots of questions. Listen to how they're answering. Are they evasive? Are they direct? Do they have examples? Do they offer to send you some references? How did you find them? Did you find them or did they reach you first? Because oftentimes if you're getting contacted first by somebody who's saying, oh, I saw your website, I'm so excited by your book, blah, 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 blah. I know that at first your ego's telling you like, yeah, of course they found me. Of course my book looks great. But in reality, these are people who are playing a numbers game. They're searching for victims every day. Now, if you get somebody reaching out for you, look at their email address. Do they have a company email address? Does their email address actually fit the company they claim to be from? Because sometimes there's like a single letter difference and it's a total scam company. But, you know, look, if something seems too good to be true, or if their website is crap, even if their website's fantastic, you know, look and cruise around and see, and then go look online and see if there's a scam associated with them. You know, oftentimes also if you're paying for a service, you can ask for a sample, but realize at the same time that there are many of these service providers for writers who have a ton of authors asking them for samples, and they can't just be doing all the work on a sample basis for free, because if not, they'd never get any work done. So that's crucial to know. But definitely trust your gut. And definitely inform yourself as to how the publishing thing works. Because if you don't know, that ignorance is where the scammers come in. That is the breach in your wall. There's a great book by Jane Friedman that's just very straightforward called How to Publish Your Book. That's going to be your great step-by-step of how this thing works. And also, of course, I've got this podcast that you can listen to a bunch of different things about writing and publishing. I've got my TikTok account, where Writing Coach, where you can always look for these different things, including scams to look out for and different ways of publishing. And then I've got my new course coming out very, very soon, From Idea to Published in 6 months. You'll want to get on the waiting list for that so that you can be the first to get an opportunity to come in. And you can take a quiz right now to see if it's right for you, because it's not right for everyone. And I want you to be in the right course. That's the other thing. I don't just want to get the numbers. I want the satisfied writers, not the ones who are like, this totally didn't work for me. Why did I even do it? I don't want to hear that ever. So that's that. If you have any more questions about scams, scammers, the writing business, how to get published, definitely please reach out to me. Send me an email, Karena@spalmorum.com, or visit my website, www.creativeandwritingcoach.com, or my online course website, www.onlinecourses for writers. Easy peasy. I look forward to being with you next time on the How to Be an Author podcast. If you have any pressing writing-related questions or would like to be featured on the How to Be an Author podcast, please feel free to reach out on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com.